Hello, thank you for having me to the Center for Fine Print Research seminars. My name is Wuon-Gean Ho, and I'm a research associate and the editor of the IMPACT Printmaking Journal in the Center for Fine Print Research, University of West of England, Bristol, England. This is my dad. He was born in Singapore and came to study in England in the 60s. Throughout his life, he loved building his body and keeping his muscles trim. And this is him in the local park when he was 75. However, in 2014, he had a terrible accident while out in the park and broke his neck and ended up in a wheelchair in a care home, paralyzed from the neck down. I used to go to visit him, and I would draw him and we would talk, but the whole time I was absolutely devastated that he could not enjoy the life he had before. I felt so sorry for him, so awful, and I also wanted to give him something that he could focus on that would connect him to the wider world. My prints that I made at the time show me really sad. Here, I've cried my eyes out, and I'm sitting in a lake of tears. But in 2016, I was awarded a fellowship at the Royal Academy Schools in London. This is the oldest art school in the UK. It was established 250 years ago, and it has a beautiful print room. The deal was that I would go in once a week and look after the presses and help any student that needed assistance for printing. If nobody came, then I could make my own work. Well, I thought this was a fantastic deal. I decided to observe the things in the Royal Academy first of all. This is the horse that belonged to George Stubbs. It's a cast and it stands in the life room alongside a skeleton and a few other busts. I did a drawing of the plaster cast of the Venus de Milo and all these other figures for life drawing. But at the same time, I questioned their validity in this contemporary era. I wondered what they would have looked like if they'd had arms. I gave them mobile phones to look at, and I put myself in the corner of the picture. I decided to make a series of prints each week, which would be very quick. They would be made on Japanese vinyl, which is this stuff here. It's blue on one side and green on the other. The format would be 15 by 20 centimeters, and they would have a maximum of 2 colors. And perhaps I could stretch the maximum a little bit by making a blend of color so that there was more intensity from one side to the other side of the block. But they were the restrictions that I would work within. So I started to make this series of prints that I would give my dad. This is a picture of the Greek and Roman busts in the life room, and I've put myself in one of the cubicles. I started to make really subversive work, sticking my tongue out at the lamps which looked like the moon along the cast corridor in the Royal Academy schools. My criteria were this. I wanted the prints to be fast, so I made them every week or every fortnight. They were personal stories that came from the heart. I wanted them to be entertaining and have some sense of narrative. And paradoxically, even though I make them very quickly, I wanted them to have some duration to their reading. I wanted them to be slow and to be full of secret symbols or hidden narratives. In some respects, I was inspired by Daumier, a French printmaker who lived in the 19th century, who made a lot of satirical cartoons that poked fun at the everyday in life. I love this print. It's called After Water fire. And you can see what it is. Two men smoking after having been in the pool, and the comedy of it all. So we're in the age of the selfie, and it's very easy to take cell phone pictures. So I put myself in the pictures this way. This is a common love that we shared. My dad and I both love swimming very much. So I made a whole series of prints based around the swimming pool. This print is about how people rush to check their phones for notifications the minute they come out of the swimming pool dripping wet. And I have to say, my dad was a real practical joker. So 1 week before his accident, I took this photograph of him in the Ashmolean Museum. He's standing in front of Apollo, and he's making a joke about his muscular torso and the love lines just above his hips. And he's saying, wouldn't it be wonderful to look like him? So I knew it would make him laugh if the minute I saw this picture. This is a poster in the Olympic swimming pool in London. It says, "This hairdryer is solely to dry your hair. Please do not use to dry your body or any other items." I wanted to show him the throng and crush of men in the Soho swimming pool in the Oasis in Holborn, where everybody is gossiping and preening and flirting with each other, and I'm the only woman in the shed. I wanted to show him what it's like when you're in the outdoor showers of the London Field Lido, and even though there are many other showers available, somebody comes and stands right next to you and decides to soak themselves vigorously. And I have to say, my mum also has a lot of black humour. She came to England in the 60s to train as a nurse and a midwife, and her sense of humour is also very much focused around the slapstick and the comedy of the body, the human body. So this print is from York Hall, which is really old swimming pool in Bethnal Green in London, and they have a mirror that's made out of beaten metal, probably for financial reasons. And every time you walk past it, you look at yourself in horror because you've been distorted into some kind of monstrous being. Imagine the happiness when the same pool installed a proper mirror. Imagine how people would cluster around it and spend hours gazing lovingly at their own reflections. So a second thing that I have in common with my dad is that we are both veterinarians. He came to London and trained from the Royal Veterinary College and graduated in 1969. I graduated in 1998. So I made a series of prints depicting various humorous situations in the veterinary world. This is a picture of when a client comes into the room and the cat climbs the client's head, and they innocently turn around and say to you, "Do you think you can reach him from there?" I used to work in a place which dealt with a lot of French bulldogs, which is suddenly and recently a very common and popular breed. And they're beautiful, but they have serious health issues and they cannot give birth naturally on their own. So usually the place where I used to work, we would do a cesarean once a day. But this particular Sunday, 2 dogs came into the practice at exactly the same moment. So we ended up doing a double cesarean. I'm the one in front and my friend Charlie is behind. And the nurses are dealing with lots of puppies all at the same time. This is a picture of a guinea pig bladder stone removal operation. And, the humor is that the guinea pig is so tiny that it's only its little feet are sticking out from the bottom of the drape. And I just wanted to say how I make my images. Um, it's I don't take any photographs or sketches at the time, but the images are constructed from the feeling of what it was like to have been in that space and from the kind of haptic and tactile memory of the situation. So in this image, if you look at it, the central point is the incision of the guinea pig surrounded by the drape. And around it, all the perspective seems to be warped as if it's a fisheye lens. And if you notice, there is no body. I don't have a lower half to my body because I don't really remember what that might have looked like. But in some respects, even though it's not an accurate or photographic lens-based view of the world, it's an intuitively correct view of the space. This is an image of the time that I'd just been trained to use ultrasound, and I decided to try and use it on a hamster. But part of this reason for why I made this image was because I wanted to explore the tenderness and love and devotion that people have for their little pets. And in some respects, you could draw a parallel line between the lighting and the tenderness of the gesture to medieval portrayals of Mary and Jesus, with this kind of divine light emanating from the body of Christ, and this very kind of soft sensation of being nestled and protected in a mother's hands. So I do have a lot of kind of little influences in the backdrop, which I don't necessarily talk about, but which are influence how I create these scenes. Talking of tenderness, this is about how we used to work as a team together. And this print is called 8 to 1. And it's about the day that 8 of us tried to move a Bernese mountain dog, which was 90 kilograms, out of a very small room into a bigger room, and how we all had to work together to make that happen. This print did actually make my dad laugh. It's about the day I nearly lost a finger to a poodle. So the prince would be taken to the care home. This is Dad in the care home with, I think he's watching probably Jackie Chan or something. And he has a notice board and there's a limited space. So you can see the prints are just pinned up there, and when he would get bored of a picture, he'd say, I don't want that one anymore, and would put a new one up. And so there was this kind of rolling curation of favorite images and images which really didn't work from a distance or had lost their entertainment and appeal. And I'd like to parallel it to the world of Instagram. This is a picture of, my Instagram wall with all these multicolored sweeties, these pictures that stay there for a short while and then they're replaced by a new picture that you like, for as long as it lasts, and then that gets buried beneath the next fresher thing. But I came to realize that although I was making prints for two people, really, my mum and my dad, I realized that there was a slightly wider appeal. I had been invited by Actuel magazine, which is in Belgium, to be on the cover and featured in their magazine last year. And I brought all my prints to China and gave a workshop in Professor Kan Ning's black and white woodblock workshop. I brought all my color prints and showed all the students what it was like to be able to use color in work. So the new conclusions that I came to were that I had an audience that was not just my parents, but it also included myself. And I started to think, what am I saying to myself when I make these works? So this is a print about what it feels like to be creative in solitude. In some respects, I imagine that I am on a boat with all the tools that I need just in front of me, marooned in a sea of carpet, floating in a cone of light, but contented and happy. This is what it feels like to look at fireworks in the darkness. And this print is about what it's like to look at the stars. This print is a conversation about what it's like to travel from London to Bristol on the National Express coach on a jam-packed service with a laptop that doesn't fit on the table and a charger point that doesn't work. This print is about what it's like to cycle through torrential rain in London on the icy streets where the needles of rain stab you through your clothes. And this print is about the Centre for Fine Print Research, when we were all working in the office together, about the quiet hum of concentration and how I would always have a little bit of a headache. So it's been 3.5 years and I've made over 100 prints. And they're mainly illustrative and very personal, but I realize they also have a slightly wider application beyond what I'm saying to myself. They may be domestic, they may be humble, they may be about daily life, but they also depict a woman as a surgeon or a non-Caucasian figure as a central character. They talk about the female body from a female point of view. So in some respects, even though they're personal, I feel that they have contemporary relevance. Last year, December, Dad nearly died. He got double pneumonia and was admitted to hospital. And I realized that the making of these prints was maybe, perhaps, a replacement for speech for myself. I titled this print, "We are all sad, but they are allowed to be sadder because they are older and technically closer to death." Now we live in an age of fear with COVID-19 and mask wearing before we step out the door. My beloved studio in East London Printmakers is closed, replaced by a really very small desk at home in the corner of the living room. I already had a monastic life before all of this. I was already very happy living on my own in my flat in London, drinking tea at night in the kitchen and pondering life. So what did this experience of intense isolation bring to me? Well, what can you say when words are not enough? First of all, I wanted to poke fun at myself, at the humorous situation of me attending a Zoom meeting in the bathroom because the reception and the lighting was much better in there than in the living room, not wearing any trousers at all. And, the absurdity of it all. I wanted to make a commentary on how essential our phones and digital devices have become. I do take pictures like source material, so this is the sketch and this is the source material and this is the final print, which I called Horror Scroll, all about abandoning the beautiful book by the bedside table and instead being captivated by these awful headlines about Johnson and Corona and PPE and lack and testing and death and destruction and global recession and climate change and this kind of unending march, this never-ending scroll, which would keep me awake at night. And then for fun, how did we interact? I would Zoom a friend with a glass of wine on a Friday night and find myself lying on the couch, not really particularly happy with the interaction. But of course, saying to the world, "Oh yeah, I'm doing fine." And slowly I started to add more words to my prints. So in this print I've written, "Send help, not used voice, mouth, speech, sound, face today." And this print really is for my dad. It's because he used to love mackerel, which my mom would cook with onions and curry powder inside the belly. And so I've written this. "If you were here, I'd invite you for lunch. We would have mackerel grilled quickly with crushed up cardamom and peppercorns and onions and steamed rice. And for afters, there would be a big bowl of frozen raspberries and ice cream, and we would sit in the sun on the balcony, and 1,000,000 seconds would pass in a flash." 1,000,000 seconds is actually 11.5 days, so it was a bit of a poetic license. I want to end on a good note. I have to say that the past month has been full of miraculously beautiful weather, and I'm lucky enough to be in a house which is an old council block that has a communal garden in the centre. Last year I was lucky enough to be awarded a space in the allotments, and this is my patch of grass that I planted there, which I'm tending with my shears. So in the lunch breaks I would go down and carve my lino blocks in this alluring, beautiful, dappled light. And here I've made a print called, "Oh, I wish I could hug you again." But really, the words aren't necessary. The leaves are beautiful, and maybe it's enough to count my blessings and feel lucky that I have this safe, secure, beautiful space to be. In April, the tree at the end of the road burst into blossom, and so I spent a while happily carving this illusion of cherry blossom, and also putting myself in at the bottom doing my daily exercise and terrifying the local ladies who thought that I'd encroached within the 2-meter range. And this is the view from the bathroom window with an amazing wall of blossom. I'd sit there in the morning in the bathroom with a cup of tea, carving, and I would like to end on this note, a prayer to everybody. So this print is called, "Every day, I pray to the blossom that you remain healthy." Or maybe I should end on this note, my attempt at online yoga classes. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you and hear about your impressions of what I've made, and I would love to keep the conversation going further. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present.